Hey, it's time for Collection Connection, the game that's just an excuse to talk about records. Due to circumstances beyond our control, this may be the last one of these we do for a while. More about that a bit later. But in any case, last Tuesday, over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel, my brother Plastic Eric shared a record from his music collection. That was the breakthrough sophomore album from Canadian alternative act Crash Test Dummies, God Shuffled His Feet from 1993. While I'm familiar with their hit song, and they were certainly dangled in front of me as occupants of my particular musical tide pool, I never did take the bait, and so most of this album was a first-time listen for me. After sharing my experience with it, I will connect it to a seemingly unrelated album from my own collection with which it shares something in common. Today, that's taken us to 1980 with another sophomore album, which is not the connection, by the way. And this time I've decided to go with the undervalued, in my opinion, Absolutely, from those ska-loving nutty boys in Madness. The challenge for you is to identify the common ground these two albums share from the information given over the course of the video, and then to put that guess in the comments along with any conversation you want to share about the bands or the albums featured. The first correct answer will receive a shout out in my brother's next video, in theory, depending on how this works out. But first, let's officially reveal the connection between the prior pair of albums. Just as I started recording here, 3 leaf blowers started up right outside, so I don't know if the mic is picking those up or not. I waited as long as I could to start recording, but I'm running out of time, so here we go. Those albums were Of Montreal's Satanic Panic in the Attic and Crash Test Dummies' God Shuffled His Feet. And the connection is that, I got a reference here to help read, is that both album covers were based on 16th century paintings. In the case of the Crash Test Dummies album, God Shuffled His Feet, it is based on Bacchus and Ariadne by Titian from the 1520s. And the Of Montreal was based on the Burial of the Count of Orgaz. If I don't know if I said Orgaz right. And that's by El Greco, and that was dated to 1586. And I also wanted to play, just because I had one, I just wanted to show Andrew Bird's My Finest Work Yet. His album is also based on, not a 16th century painting, but a painting from 1793, The Death of Marat, by Jacques-Louis David. So I just had an extra one there. I thought I would throw that in for fun. It was possibly guessed by Steve Carlson, who mentioned something about a painting but didn't phrase it as a guess. So I'm not sure if he was guessing or not, but it was definitively guessed by Murdoch from Murdoch's Music Minute. Congratulations to Murdoch. He's going through some Mike Oldfield over on his channel recently, so check that out. And with that, let's get on with the show. Okay, I think I outlasted the leaf blowers, so they're finally gone. So let's talk about God Shuffled His Feet by the Crash Test Dummies. This is a band that got a lot of play in my primary music circle, especially online, the XTC forum, because Crash Test Dummies made it known that they were XTC fans. They recorded and released a single of a cover of the Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead. Oh man, they just started up again. I don't know if that's going to pick up or not. I heard that it did pick up on the first segment. Anyway, as well as covering All You Pretty Girls on the Testimonial Dinner album, which was a tribute to XTC. So I have that album, so I have that Crash Test Dummies song, and I have another Stray Crash Test Dummies track in Superman's Song, which was actually their breakout single from their first album in Canada. And I have not the album version of that, but a sort of a live in studio at a radio station version of that song. But I don't have anything from God Shuffled His Feet. But they were certainly, right in my orbit. And never appealed to me enough to really take the plunge with it. So listened to it a couple times here. I think I enjoyed it better not listening to the lyrics. Musically, I think it's not bad. The first time through, I was really paying attention to the lyrics. I guess just because Brad Roberts, is that his name? His vocals are so prominent in the mix, but I was finding myself getting annoyed by the lyrics. It seemed like a lot of, I don't know, I'm 12 years old and this is deep kind of thing, or those sort of faux deep thoughts, that one might have when they're high, like, man, you ever think about how squirrels got really fluffy tails, Whoa. And it's sort of like a setup without a payoff, just to a Keanu Reeves, Bill and Ted type whoa moment that feels like it's trying to be deep, but they don't realize how shallow it is, really. And so I was getting a little annoyed by that. And that is sort of typified by, the chorus of where they set up these stories that don't kind of really go anywhere. They're just kind of things. And the chorus doesn't reflect anything, doesn't bring anything home, but seems to say, wow, really makes you think, doesn't it? But it doesn't. It doesn't make me think. So lyrically, not that strong. Musically, especially as the album went on, I enjoyed quite a bit more. It's interesting that was their only significant hit in the U.S., but it was not only not their biggest hit in Canada, it wasn't even their biggest hit off of this album. Afternoons and Coffee Spoons, is that the name of the song, and Swimming in Your Ocean were both top 10 singles in Canada from God Shuffled His Feet. And the cover of the Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, I think, did well there as a single. And as I mentioned, Superman Song from their first album was a bigger hit. So through a bunch of albums, they've had a string of hits in Canada, but they truly are just one-hit wonders in the U.S. with no real significant charting away from this one album and specific single. I don't know. I don't know if it seemed like they should have been bigger or not. I didn't. I listened to the 2 tracks that I had just sort of randomly, plus that album, and I don't know. I'm not in any rush necessarily to go back and listen to some more, but I think it is better music than it is thoughtful lyrics. I don't think the lyrics are nearly as thoughtful as maybe they thought that they were when they were coming up with them. Anyway, that's my take on God Shuffled His Feet, and what I am connecting it to is Absolutely, the second album from Madness. Madness was a 7-piece, you can see here on the cover. They hit big in England immediately, to the point where in my mind they've always sort of been second to the Beatles in terms of being hit makers. I counted up, and I believe they had 19 top 20 hits in the span of 1979 to 1984. So we were there in England, living there this entire time. And they just had hit after hit, and I think 15 of those 19 tracks were even top 10 hits on top of that. And I think they only had maybe one number one, and that was House of Fun, which, again, is different than Our House, which is the song that American audiences know them for. And my journey sort of with Madness has been I guess it started off with the compilation called Madness, and it had like all the band members sort of with their heads in a billiards triangle or pool, rack. And I think that made some waves. It was made to capitalize on the success of Our House in the American charts, and that was the first thing I got. And for a long time I felt like, yeah, they're just a singles band, really. And I wasn't necessarily interested in getting more. But somewhere along the line, I'm not even sure what changed it. I just felt like, no, you know what? If they put out decent versions of these albums, maybe I would pick those up. But Madness is one of those acts that they had, I don't know, maybe 13. I'm forgetting the numbers now. But in that range of studio albums coming as recently as a couple years ago. I think was their most recent one. They're one of those bands that split up for a while, kind of came back together, and have been recording new music since 1999. I don't know that it's quite the same lineup. I didn't follow anything from 1999. I believe was the year for Wonderful on. I haven't even heard any of those things because they're just not a thing. They're such a British act, I guess. Is the part of it that I understand is that they're fundamentally British, and songs like Baggy Trousers off of Absolutely, reflect a very British school kid experience that wouldn't necessarily relate in the same way to an American audience, or at least that being the thinking. I think that the song is enough of a banger that it shouldn't really matter, and then you might listen to it and learn something about sort of what it was to be a kid going to school in England, rather than saying, oh, that's about English school kids, who gives a crap. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me all the time. And gosh, I'm trying to pile drive through this. I think I was going somewhere with that, but I forget where it was. Now that the machines, they did turn off again, are seemingly gone. I'm really trying to cram this out in a big old hurry so I can get this video out in a timely fashion. So, yes, so they were a band. They had a number of studio albums, but they have had many more compilation albums than original studio albums. And every time, I was thinking about buying some Madness, all I could ever find were these compilations, which seems to underscore that they were primarily a singles band. And they were such a dynamite singles band that it's like, how could the singles be so good and the album tracks not be good? That just didn't make any sense to me. So I decided I would wait until, they were reissued in a careful way, and it took years and years and years to happen. But in 2010, it looks like, they reissued the Madness catalog as the original albums, expanded with a second disc, so that's what this is. And I got their first album, One Step Beyond, which is kind of a ska classic that rides alongside, albums like by the Specials and, the Selector, English Beat, and those sorts of bands. But they very quickly evolved. There's still a ton of ska all over, Absolutely. But there's also kind of a growing maturity, and a song like Embarrassment, which is another banger of a song, was another hit single. It's just a really rock and pop tune, and funny that we're just a couple of weeks off talking about Ben Folds, that and the song Brick, that Embarrassment is a song that was a true story about, I'm afraid I'm going to get the person's name wrong, I think it's Chris Thompson, but the writer of the song's sister having gotten pregnant with an African American, well, not an African American because they're English, I'm trying to be too PC, but a black man, and the rejection that she received from her family as a result of that. So, it's even, they're talking about subjects. So as much as they had this sort of nutty boy image, and on stage they were, skanking all over the place and hard to control, the songs got pretty thoughtful. And so, so I got One Step Beyond, Absolutely, and then their next two albums, Seven and Not Mad, The Rise and Fall. So I have those 4 studio albums now. I'm happy to have them. There is additional good stuff on these albums. It is true that probably the singles are the strongest things, but those are also the songs that I've been hearing for 40 years. So, they easily stand head and shoulders just from recognition, nostalgia, whatever. But there's other great tracks on here. Disappear is a song that I like. Close Escape, On the Beat Pete. Solid Gone is kind of like a one step beyond for this album that stays in that sort of that nutty repertoire that they had. But it almost kind of sticks out on this album a little bit as not maturing. And their music got more just sort of straight pop, maybe flavored with some of that ska now and again as they went on. But I think they were a fantastic singles band. I think it's criminal that they didn't cross the Atlantic, really. And I wonder, if I would like some of this later stuff. I've just never gone and explored it. But they were a great band. Madness was a great band. The other single from here was Return of the Las Palmas 7, which is just kind of a short instrumental that is like a lounge act that makes me laugh. I mean, it's funny, but not very ska, but it is, it's sweet, and it's interesting that with songs like Return of the Las Palmas 7 and One Step Beyond, they were actually putting out sort of short instrumental tracks as singles, and they were doing well in the charts. And I think the song One Step Beyond is come on maybe a little bit as a more recognizable tune to American audiences. But yeah, I'd definitely recommend at least the hits, but much deeper than that. Madness, sort of that full 80s catalog. I think it's hard to go wrong. And the songs get more mature as they go, but they're really bangers. They have a real buoyancy in their sound that even the other ska bands, of the time didn't really have. So I love them. I think that they've got a ton of great songs. Gray Day, Tomorrow's Just Another Day, It Must Be Love is a great one, and Wings of a Dove is my personal favorite from them from a little bit later on, and just a ton of tracks. Great band. You're really missing out if you are not familiar with Madness. And so if you think you can name or identify the connection that Madness is absolutely shares with the Crash Test Dummies, God Shuffled His Feet, you can put that down in the comments. Make your guess. I will say that this is more broadly about the bands than it is the specific album. And in fact, it probably would have been better for me to do the Rise and Fall for this, but the Rise and Fall is an album that I've already talked about on the Collection Connection. That would really kind of nail in the connection. But so don't take it too much on the specific albums. It's more about the bands in general. And I feel like I have telegraphed it enough over the course of the video that it's almost not telegraphed. It's almost, I feel like I just kind of told you what the connection was. But still, throw that guess down in the comments. As far as what the future looks like, we're not quite sure how it's going to play out. Eric finds himself unable to make videos in the near term. We're not sure if and when that will be able to turn around. And so we might take a couple of approaches. We might straight up go on hiatus. This might be the last one you see for a while. I might conceivably just play myself, play against myself, and just kind of keep it going. And I've also started to look into the possibility of having some sort of fill-in people who might be able to contribute an episode or two, but not necessarily on the 1 week schedule that we just recently established. So with all that said, we hope you hang around and follow up with us whenever, we figure out exactly what it is that we're doing. I just don't know yet at this point. And so with that, hopefully we'll see you soon. And leave that guess down in the comments. Hopefully this is not the video that blows up. Because, I got nothing to follow it up with in the short term. But I do have some other ideas. Maybe those things will start to happen. Push me into things that are away from the Collection Connection that I've been vaguely working on for years but never committed to actually getting done. So maybe some of that will happen. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.